June 28, 1919. The Palace of Versailles, France. Delegates from numerous nations have assembled to ratify the work of the Paris Peace Conference. Present are the key figures of the Big Four: US President Woodrow Wilson, French Premier Georges Clemenceau, British Prime Minister David Lloyd George, and Italian Prime Minister Vittorio Orlando. Opposite them, the German delegation, led by Foreign Minister Hermann Müller and Transportation Minister Johannes Bell, signs the treaty, formally ending a conflict that raged for over 4 years. The cost of this peace is staggering: over 33 million casualties, shattered national economies, and the looming spectre of a new war. But was this outcome inevitable? Were there attempts to end the war earlier? Who initiated them, and why did they fail? Today we will examine the timeline of the war to explore the pivotal moments when the world saw a chance for peace. From the very beginning of the Great War, a parallel conflict was fought, not in the trenches, but in the chancelleries of Europe. Yet in 1914, the political climate was hostile to negotiation. While the International Congress of Women demanded continuous mediation in April 1915 and the Zimmerwald Conference saw socialists call for peace without annexations later that year, these were voices in the wilderness. The political elites and societies of the belligerent nations were intoxicated by the illusion of a short war. Believing that their armies were superior and that military victory was imminent, governments were reluctant to entertain any peace process that would deny them the full spoils of victory. By 1916, however, the grim reality of the stalemate forced a shift, bringing about the first explicit peace intentions at the state level. The most significant of these was the House-Grey Memorandum of February 1916. This secret initiative stemmed from US President Woodrow Wilson's belief that the war had become a deadlock and required an honorable end. His emissary, Colonel House, proposed a plan where Wilson would call for a peace conference. If Germany refused, the United States would probably enter the war on the Allied side. House proposed terms favorable to the Allies, such as restoring Belgium and transferring Alsace-Lorraine to France, while compensating Germany with colonies outside Europe. Despite the encouragement of British Foreign Secretary Sir Edward Grey, the initiative collapsed. President Wilson weakened the agreement by insisting on the ambiguous word "probably" regarding American intervention. Simultaneously, the British War Committee rejected the proposal, fearing that a mediated settlement would be equivalent to a defeat. French officials, locked in the desperate struggle of Verdun, viewed the idea with equal scorn. Consequently, the offer was deemed premature and formally rejected. As 1916 drew to a close, Germany launched its own diplomatic maneuver. On December 12, Chancellor Bethmann Hollweg initiated a peace offensive. Negotiating from a position of strength following the defeat of Romania, he offered to open discussions. The peace note was issued through neutral channels, making a vague offer of negotiations. Crucially, the note contained no specific terms and not a single word about restoring Belgian or Serbian sovereignty. Historians debate whether Hollweg's intentions were sincere or if it was merely a calculated strategy. Nevertheless, because the note lacked specific guarantees, the Allies indignantly rejected it as a war maneuver. In a final attempt to halt the slide toward total escalation, President Wilson delivered his Peace Without Victory address to the Senate on January 22, 1917. He argued that a peace forced through humiliation creates a fundamental instability that makes future conflict inevitable. He proposed a settlement based on equality and new international foundations. This concept served as a philosophical foundation for the war aims Wilson later enumerated in the 14 points, specifically his vision for a new global system of collective security institutionalized in a League of Nations. Yet, the German Empire remained unconvinced. Just 9 days later, on January 31st, Germany announced the resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare. This decision effectively killed Wilson's vision, forcing the United States into the conflict not as a mediator, but as a belligerent determined to make the world safe for democracy. While the United States mobilized, a desperate dynastic tragedy played out in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In the spring of 1917, the young Emperor Charles I, who had ascended the throne in late 1916, launched the secret Sixtus Affair. Using his brother-in-law, Prince Sixtus of Bourbon-Parma, as a secret intermediary to the French government, Charles sent a letter on March 24, 1917, outlining his commitment to a negotiated peace. However, negotiations stalled due to the Allies' obligations to Italy. Italian Foreign Minister Sonnino insisted on the fulfillment of maximalist territorial demands guaranteed by the Treaty of London, preventing Britain and France from accepting a moderate Austrian proposal without risking the collapse of their own coalition. The secret diplomatic efforts ended in public disaster in April 1918 during the Channin incident. After Austrian Foreign Minister Channin publicly implied that French peace efforts had failed solely due to demands for Alsace-Lorraine, French Premier Georges Clemenceau retaliated by publishing Charles' signed letter, which explicitly acknowledged those claims. The revelation caused a major diplomatic scandal, forcing Charles to issue unconvincing denials and resulting in Channin's resignation. Ultimately, the exposure destroyed Emperor Charles' credibility with both the Allies and the Central Powers, driving Austria-Hungary into total subservience to Germany for the remainder of the war. By the summer of 1917, war weariness in Germany led to the Reichstag Peace Resolution, where a parliamentary majority called for a peace of understanding without annexations. However, the German Supreme Army Command, led by Hindenburg and Ludendorff, neutralized this effort, replacing the Chancellor and ignoring the resolution. With the conflict entering its fourth agonizing year, the Vatican made its most significant diplomatic intervention. On August 1st, Pope Benedict XV issued the Papal Peace Note. The Pope proposed a peace based on the status quo ante bellum, a return to the frontiers of 1914 without annexations or indemnities. His comprehensive plan outlined specific steps to de-escalate the conflict, calling for the full restoration of Belgian independence, general disarmament, freedom of the seas, and the establishment of a concert of nations to settle future disputes through arbitration. However, the initiative was immediately compromised by geopolitical mistrust. Suspecting the proposal had been formulated in consultation with Berlin, the Entente powers offered stiff resistance. The definitive blow came from President Woodrow Wilson, who rejected the appeal on August 27, 1917. Arguing that the German autocracy could not be trusted, Wilson reframed the conflict as a struggle for democracy that required fundamental regime change. When Germany subsequently offered only a featureless reply to British inquiries regarding Belgian independence, the diplomatic effort collapsed, solidifying the Allied commitment to a purely military solution. Ultimately, peace did come to one front. Following the Bolshevik Revolution, Vladimir Lenin sought to exit the war to preserve his new regime. Negotiations at Brest-Litovsk in early 1918 were volatile, with Leon Trotsky attempting a no-war, no-peace strategy. But when the German army resumed its advance, the Bolsheviks were forced to capitulate. On March 3, 1918, Russia signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, ceding vast territories including Poland, Ukraine and the Baltics, and losing 30% of its population. The brutality of these terms convinced the Western allies that a negotiated peace with Imperial Germany was impossible. It hardened their resolve to achieve a total military victory, setting the stage for the final collapse of the Central Powers and the subsequent Peace of Versailles. When reviewing the history of failed diplomacy, we must also recall lesser-known initiatives like the Lansdowne Letter, the Leeds Convention, and the Bolshevik Decree on Peace. While symbolic of the growing exhaustion within Europe, these efforts held little sway over the grinding machinery of war. It's tempting to judge these initiatives as simply good or bad, but this binary misses the point. These proposals failed because they were predominantly asymmetrical. They didn't account for the existential war aims of the opposing sides. They were viewed not as genuine paths to peace, but as tactical pauses or signs of weakness. However, as we look back at the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, we are reminded of the prophetic words of Marshal Ferdinand Foch regarding the final treaty. This is not peace, it's an armistice for 20 years. History would tragically prove that the rejection of earlier negotiated settlements may have paved the way for a peace that was destined to fail.